Hey everybody, just to get started, we've got a couple of housekeeping items. We will do a Q&A at the end, so please just wait until the end with your questions. We will email out, we are recording, and we will email out the recording tomorrow morning to anybody who registered, and then any links that we mentioned I will put in the recording description on our YouTube page. And then also please keep yourself muted this evening. We do have a couple dozen people here. All right, so first off, who are we? The name of the company that is putting on this presentation is Backlog. Backlog is my company. We've been around for about 2 years, and we really specialize in helping smaller institutions bridge the digital divide, bring their collections online. So we do archival consulting. So if you have an all volunteer run historical society, we can come in and help standardize things by writing some policies and procedures. By platform hosting, I mean that we also host some archival softwares like Omeka and Archivespace. So if that's something that you've been looking to transition over to, but then again, also on the personal side of things, we do genealogy research and then also some private archives as well. And I'm Emma. I founded Backlog in 2021 after being laid off during the pandemic. Since then, I found that a lot of places need a little bit of help, but can't always afford someone full time. And that's kind of where Backlog comes in. We do projects for places that need help. And then I'm here tonight with Greg.
Oh, you want me to introduce myself? I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Greg Kessler. I've been working for Backlog for about a year. I'm a historian and a writer. I work mostly on music, but I also work on a lot of archive things and run my own St. Louis music archive.
Great. All right, and with that, I'm going to give it to Greg.
Okay. I know when I first got online, which would have been 95 or something, there was no talk of how this was, whatever I did online was going to live online forever. There was no idea of what digital legacy or digital inheritance is, but we've reached the point now where we've got a generation of activity that has lived on the internet and is going to live on beyond the people who started it. And there are millions of, just for instance, Facebook accounts that belong to people who passed away. And I think we've reached a point where it's important that people start thinking about what their legacy is going to look like when they pass away and can no longer have any control over it. So each and every social media company and email company and everybody else has their own policies. They are similar in some ways, but they're a little different in others. And they give survivors of people who own those accounts different powers and different abilities. So we're going to kind of go through those so you can see what they are and then maybe what you can do to sort of set the stage when something like that happens. There is an account called Liza Minnelli Outlives, and Liza Minnelli has outlived all of these things that were at one time something important on the internet. I think the funny thing is the person who put this up and is the administrator of this Liza Minnelli Outlives, this will likely outlive him, and this will be his digital legacy. And it could be good or it could be bad. And I doubt that at this point he has started thinking about how people in 50 or 60 years are going to view him, having used Liza Minnelli as the benchmark for how long software lives. But I think it's interesting that as he keeps saying this is now becoming his digital legacy. There were early websites that could gave you a way to show your personality online before we had actual social media. The first thing I did was I got on AOL, and there were ways to sort of customize the experience, but it wasn't very detailed. And as hard as I tried, I could not find out what happened to those original accounts. But the big ones and the ones that I used early on and people used early on were Angel Fire, Tripod, and Geocities, and there were some others, and they gave you free server space to build a website. And Geocities was the one I used, and it was probably the biggest of all of them. And you did things like you chose a neighborhood. So it was music or books or something else. And those sites stayed online. You didn't have to pay for them. Eventually, Geocities got bought out. It shut down in the United States and continued to exist in Japan for a few years longer. And those profiles and those websites disappeared until people started trying to resurrect them. And what was nice was I had put up a GeoCities site. It's terrible. And I would show it to my students to show them what core HTML looks like. But it's available again. And we have a screenshot of the front page. This was my very first web page. It was about 1996. 1997. It's for an author named Thorne Smith. I don't know why I chose goldfish for the background, but I hadn't seen this in probably 10 years. And a few years ago, I thought, I wonder if it's out there. And I went to look, and it is indeed there. And GeoCities is one of the only ones that not only does the HTML exist, but the pictures exist as well. So in terms of the internet, this is the earliest example of me on the internet. If people search this in 100 years, this ridiculous goldfish wallpaper is what they're going to notice. But it's only the beginning of it, because we now have another 30 years of me putting up poor web pages. So, but this is for me personally, this is the earliest evidence of me being online. The earliest online journals, LiveJournal was one, which ones I didn't have a lot of experience with, but Xanga was an early social media platform used by students. And the way I learned about it was I had a student who came into the library, because I was a high school librarian, and started talking about it. And we had some students put pictures of themselves on it, doing things they weren't supposed to do. So I was tasked with going out and finding the pictures. And that was my first experience understanding what social media would be. Xanga also, I believe, shut down in the United States, but continued to exist in Japan. And now there is actually a Xanga 2.0 that you have to pay for. But those old accounts, you can pay to have those recovered and have control of them again. So people who were teenagers in the 90s and the early 2000s can actually go back and see these things. They haven't been totally destroyed, but they are a little more difficult to get to than more modern things. There's lots of defunct social media. There were lots of Google Plus is the one I remember a lot of people saying, I'm done with Facebook, I'm going to switch to Google Plus. It's the future. And it lasted just a couple of years. Friendster is one. Yik Yak I never took a look at. But these things disappear relatively quickly, but it doesn't mean that what was on those servers is gone forever. So the things you said, the insults you put out, the memes you used are still somewhere on the internet for someone to find. Myspace was actually the first of the social media that I tried, and I tried it because students were using it. I wanted to understand what they were doing. Unfortunately, Myspace was purchased by Fox, I believe, News Corp, I guess. And during a migration of data, they lost, I think, 70 to 80% of everything that had ever been uploaded. So all the photos and all of the music. So when I started to do this, I decided I would go back and see if I could find my MySpace page, because occasionally I could find it. And you can find the profile, but there's nothing there because everything that was there has been lost and destroyed. So this is one instance where the company itself took care of anybody who wanted to erase what they had done on MySpace. There is still a MySpace out there. I have no idea who uses it or what it's for, but there are still profiles out there. Facebook, which I think is probably still the largest. When someone passes away, you can actually assign someone as a legacy contact, and that person can turn your account into a memorial. They can create a pinned post at the top that says this person's passed away, we will miss them, blah, 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 update the profile picture and handle requests, but they can't edit anything that comes in. They can't read personal messages. They can't remove friends. They can't go back and edit previous posts. So it does limit what you can do, but what they can do is they can sort of freeze it. So somebody doesn't take it over and start reposting again. I think they were probably one of the first to come up with any kind of idea, because there are millions of Facebook accounts that belong to people who have passed away. Instagram, which is also owned by Facebook, theirs, oddly enough, is a little bit different. You have to have a verified immediate family member or have an executor, and you have to have the right documentation. You have to send them a death certificate and information that you were actually related. Once it is memorialized, no one can access it. It'll have remembering next to it, so it shows that you've passed away. Everything else remains visible, so it doesn't go away, but you can sort of freeze it in time and space so people don't keep adding to it, things like that. Twitter will collaborate with the people who've been authorized to use it or immediate family members. They can work to deactivate the user's account. They will help with the necessary assistance in handling the deactivation process, but I don't believe that they have a memorial aspect to it. So once it's done, it's done. Once you let them know that you've passed away, whatever horrible thing you've said about some politician is gone. It's not something that lives on, and I don't think Twitter is that kind of a profile, that kind of a platform. It's more of an immediate thing. So there is no memorializing this. Once it's done, and it goes away. TikTok is an odd one. Only the user or a relative with access codes, that basically just means if you've left your codes with somebody, can access that account. If no one uses it for 180 days, and this is the strange part, TikTok assigns a random number-based username, but the account and its content remain online. So if you haven't assigned someone with the authority to turn it off and get rid of whatever you've put on there, it stays on there with a number instead of your name. I have no idea why. I couldn't find a real explanation, but they seemed intent on everything staying up there. So this is one of the instances where you have to take proactive measures to give someone your passwords before you pass away, so that they can deactivate this if that's what you want. So TikTok's a little strange. To my knowledge, it's the only one of these not based in the United States. So I don't know if there are different rules, but they are probably the strangest of the policies. Your email as well will hang out there. Email is a little different because email kind of goes everywhere and it's never really gone, but each of these have their own policy as what someone can do when you pass away. If you want it deleted, you want it all gone, you want it downloaded, things like that. So they've all got their own policy for you. AOL automatically automatically deactivate accounts after 90 days. 30 days for free accounts, removing all content associated with the account. If you want to contact them, you can contact AOL customer support to delete someone's account, but you have to have the right information. During the deletion process, you will be asked about your relationship with the deceased. You may need to provide supporting documents such as a copy of a death certificate. So this is another instance where you're going to have the right documentation to pull something down. But even if you don't, after 90 days, if you're paying, or 30 days if you're not, it will go away. One thing to remember though is if these are tied to credit cards that aren't going to go bad, they will keep charging you until the credit card is either deactivated or someone with access to the credit card shuts it off. Yahoo does not provide passwords or access to the deceased account. If there's information in there that someone needs, they're just kind of out of luck if they don't already have the passwords. Closure of a Yahoo account can be requested by sending specific documentation to the Yahoo address. You need a request letter, an appointment document, basically your executor letter, and the death certificate to be able to get rid of this. Otherwise, Yahoo will hold on to the account and it'll stay active. Gmail offers an inactive account manager, which means that you can designate someone who has access to the account and they can decide whether it should be deleted or not. In the case of a deceased person's account, Google will collaborate with the family to decide what happens to the account. In certain situations, Google may provide content from a deceased user's account. So if there is something in there that you need, if there is banking information, if there's other passwords, legal information, Gmail is the one who might possibly be able to provide you with that, depending on whether you have the authorizations. Otherwise, if somebody doesn't have the passwords, they're just kind of out of luck. Hotmail will, this is actually part of their instructions. Delete the account before you die, and you have 60 days to change your mind. I'm not sure what that means, because if you're going to die within 60 days, you're not going to know that. They say that they suggest you instruct someone who you trust to have an executor or something like that to be in charge of it after you die. After 12 months of inactivity, the account will be deleted regardless. The 60 days to change your mind works fine if you're not deleting it because you're going to die. Otherwise, it's kind of a moot point. But you do have the option, or after 12 months, it will go away. Squarespace started out as a blog, and if they receive a request from a family member for what is called billing access to the site, billing access gives you the opportunity to decide whether you're going to keep paying for Squarespace or not. That's really what you have. You have no access to the site, you have no access to the content or to change things. If the credit card expires and no payment is made, they'll take the site down. So the quickest way to get it taken down is to not pay for it. Flickr is another one of those that you have to pay for. If you don't pay for it, it will go away. Flickr offers the option to request an account of a deceased member to be placed in memoriam state. So it's one of those things, you're not going to pay for it anymore. You can't change it, you can't add to it, but it'll stay up as sort of a memorial to your visual past. And that's even if you don't have a pro subscription, which you pay for. The username is changed to indicate in memoriam, and the access is locked. So even if somebody is an executor, they can't get in and change anything. This is your best bet. A social media will is just like a will, any other kind of will, except that you appoint a digital executor. That digital executor is given the information they need and the instructions they need to handle your online legacy. They have your passwords, they have your logins, they may know your credit card information to be able to stop something. They know what you pay online, they know what your bank and your electrical and everything else is. It's up to them to carry out your wishes. So your social media will say, this person is my executor and this is what I want done. I want my Facebook account to be memorialized. I want my TikTok account deleted. I want you to stop payment for all of my bills and cancel my credit cards. You add all of these things on there, and that helps you curate what your social media legacy will be. So if you have a very nice Facebook account, but you have a very angry Twitter account, those two things, one can stay and one can go. The executor, it is up to the executor to follow the instructions that they're given in the social media will. And there are several things that you should remember to add to this. You want to give them login details, not only for social media, but also for your email accounts, websites, blogs, any forums. So if you're on Reddit and you want something deleted, or you want to tell the people that you have passed away, they have the ability to do that. Other online communities, which you regularly engage with, you want to make sure that they have login details for each and every one of these, so they can go out and either lock those accounts, delete them, or let people know, who you may not know in real life, what has happened. You also want to make sure that you don't forget about all of the money that you spend online. Your financial and banking accounts, personal checking, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, eBay and Amazon, and all of your bills. If you're paying your electric, your gas, magazines, your cable, your internet, anything like that that you're paying for, they need to know what it is. So they don't have to go hunting for it. Need to know what the passwords are, need to know what credit cards are being used, or if you're paying those things through Venmo or PayPal, so they know how to go out and turn these things off.
We'll take questions in just a second. I know we went through it. But our next webinar is on climate change and cultural heritage. So what can we do? I know here in St. Louis, we've had more than one 100-year flood in the last 5 years. So not only our collections are in bigger threat than they were in past years. Our next webinar after that is on family Bibles and genealogy. So how can we use family Bibles to be to work as vital records when you're trying to connect generations? Our speaker will also go over how to find your family Bible. So sometimes they end up in an archive or a historical society. And then the speaker also combs Goodwills, especially their online sites, and then tries to reconnect the Bibles to the family. So it'll be pretty interesting. And then if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat or to unmute yourself. What about Ancestry for genealogy records? Do you mean like as far as like saving it, or? So I'm gonna guess that in the chat it says, what about Ancestry? Is the okay? I believe that's what happens. You know, like somebody has to make payment. Your tree may still be live. You just can't access it from the back end and edit it. I always say that Ancestry is great for discovering things, but it's not great to be your like permanent tree to share with your next generation. You can download a GEDCOM file and save that. You can also print off a tree. But I just think Ancestry is so expensive to pay for like 25 years. But I've seen, like, I have an aunt who I know used to use you know, like Ancestry, and they've stopped paying for it, but I can still see her tree. And I think for the next question, we need to also just, you know, preface that we are not lawyers. But Greg, the next question is, should we name a digital executor in our traditional wills? And so I think that that's really a question for your lawyer, if they should be separate or together. And usually this is more of a social thing. And I don't know about DNA accounts. You'd have to really read the fine writing, especially like who has access to that. You know, like what if the company that you did your DNA testing through is bought or sold? I think that that's a lot of things to dig into. So Greg, how did you find your Geocities website? Did you just search for yourself, or how did you?
I started looking to see what had happened to them, and I saw that there was a grassroots effort to recover them. And someone, I guess, had gone, I don't know if they'd gone into the Wayback Machine or whatever, and started reconstructing the neighborhoods and was able to track mine down. I had two, that wasn't the one I put up, but one I had the actual address on. So I was able to go in, because you don't have to know your address. And the other, there was somebody who had another page, it was GeoCity page, and they migrated it to an actual page and still had a link to my stupid page. So I was able to get the address off of it, and it helped me find it in the thing. It was a little bit of detective work involved, but it was worth it to see that again. So, but they are still out there, the majority of them.
Okay. And then I think there's a question about Facebook. Do you know this one, Greg? The question is, with Facebook, do you have to specify the legacy contact in advance, or can a family member contact Facebook after your death?
I believe your family member can contact, but I think that is one of those things that you have to have a death certificate and have to have all the other documentation to do it. The best thing to do really is to leave that information with someone. The social media will is the easiest because that person actually has the passwords and to do it. But I'm pretty sure that any company, except for TikTok, which I don't understand, you can go to them with a death certificate and a birth certificate and say, I have this right.
I just got a question about medical records. That I don't know, because a lot of those are governed by HIPAA laws. So that's going to be like if you use UpDocs or something. I don't know the ins and outs of those. And there isn't a handout. We are recording this and it will be posted on YouTube tomorrow. Yeah. And if anybody's really interested in learning, I don't know much about medical records, so I can't answer that. But if anybody's interested in learning more about this, there's a book called What If You Get Hit by a Bus, or What Happens When You Get Hit by a Bus. Anyways, I'll put it in the description later. And that's the most comprehensive book that I've seen on what to do with everything if you pass away. I've seen a lot of books that are almost like, putting together a will, put together a binder for your children. But if you get hit by a bus, this book I thought was the most practical. And it kind of even goes over like, hey, you should write down your garage code for someone, like very basic things that we wouldn't normally think to save. And I think the question, are passwords safe as part of the will? I think that question is more like, how safe is your will and who is it with? And then how often do you update it and how often do you update your passwords? Oh, thanks for posting that, Sarah. And we were kind of going through this and deciding what to include and not to include. And we really focused on email and social media. And I was thinking, oh, we definitely need to include AOL, because whether or not, like I know a lot of people still use it for email, but I know we all had it once upon a time. So Jean asks, what about keeping a copy of all passwords in her safety deposit box and update the list every 6 months?
I keep mine on a flash drive that's unplugged from the computer. So as long as somebody knows where it is and knows that it's safe, I know some people leave theirs on a list on the computer, which is always possible that someone will hack in and get it. I leave mine in other places. I used to keep mine in a book, but I keep mine on a flash drive that isn't plugged into the computer. So wherever you want to leave it, where it isn't accessible online, as long as people know where it is, I think that's, whatever works best.
Yeah, and somebody suggested a 1password.com account. Yeah, so there are different password managers. And also the book really suggests getting a password manager and using it, and kind of goes into a little bit more of that. We started doing some personal archives work and we had some questions about digital. So this was a subject I was looking into, and that one book was just the most helpful. There are others. We'll give it just another minute for questions if anybody has anything. Okay. Well, I'm going to end it here for the evening. I will send everybody an email tomorrow with a link to the presentation, and then that will be our YouTube channel. And we also did one last month on how to preserve and how to access your early digital photographs. So that one's also helpful when you're kind of dealing with all of your digital stuff when you're, downsizing. But have a good evening, everybody.
Have a good night.